There are a lot of ways to manage your character sheets for Dungeons and Dragons. Today, I'm kind of going to talk about D&D Beyond making everybody very angry and then trying to make them happy again. With the coming out of the new PHB Monster Manual, DM's Guide, the 2024 versions of the books. They were trying to move away on D&D Beyond in some form or fashion from the 2014 source material, 5e, which I guess the new stuff is like 5.5e or D&D 1. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know because I haven't looked too much into it because I don't plan on switching from 5e, but I do have a bunch of players that actually use D&D Beyond to manage their character sheets around the table, and they've been really upset the last couple days, so I wanted to kind of look into it, and in doing so, I kind of went back in time. A decade ago, whenever we first started like playing hardcore, we actually used something called OrcPub, which was just what all my players used to manage their characters. And I remember OrcPub disappearing, and I kind of didn't really remember why or how or the circumstances. I always assumed it was due to some sort of legal issues, that, it was copyright stuff, whatever, and that does seem to be the case, but it looks like the guy or gal, whoever it was that made OrcPub, did a Kickstarter to try and to get money to, I don't know, buy licensing to be able to run the thing. I mean, I get it. This guy was asking for a bunch of money to promote something using things that I guess weren't technically his. It is what it is, but that isn't really uncommon in this space. We're talking about books that are converted to PDFs in digital format and are easily shared. There are places like the Trove that were eventually shut down for sharing all kinds of TTRPGs. It wasn't really Wizards or Hasbro that shut these guys down. It seems to have been something in regards to Warhammer, I believe, but there is still a very unhappy community out there, thousands and thousands of people that use the Trove to get legacy content for really old tabletop RPGs and things, instead of going out to eBay and trying to find someone that had it. So I'm not going to dive too far into this rabbit hole, but you can if you would like to. But the whole point of this is that Hasbro, Wizards, they've done a really good job of making people angry and then backtracking. I remember the OGL stuff for creators, Real Play, D&D podcasts and the like. Those that were on the upper echelon, the top creators, the ones that were raking in the dough, if they made over a certain amount, they were going to have to start giving a percentage of their earnings back to Wizards to kind of be able to have the rights to use this stuff on their streams and videos, etc., etc. As far as I know it as well, because during this time, I was just kind of watching at a distance. This was before we started recording our games and stuff. Now I'm looking into it more because it is curious and it makes me kind of wonder in the future if I would switch from 5e to something else. I know Cobalt Press and a lot of other companies have made their own kind of systems to fight off potential OGL problems in the future. But this is the example that I just find so interesting in this day and age, to where these companies just cripple under the weight of public feedback, which can be a good thing. I'm curious how bad it could get. What if we start complaining about everything? It's just something to think about. And then we kind of jump into the root of the more recent issues, and it had to do with the changelog from this month, and it's specifically here. It says if you want to use the old versions of magic items, spells that have been replaced by its 2024 counterpart, you will need to create a homebrew copy of it and enable homebrew content on your character sheet. Then you can add it to the character sheet yourself. See, I haven't used D&D Beyond in a while, but what I do remember is that it was a pain in the ass to use these systems. Nothing ever really worked right. I also want to go down here and just point out the dire wolf in the new system got nerfed, bro. For real. The new blocks also look a little weird to me, but as I said, I've not really looked into it. But D&D Beyond immediately went into let's fix this mode. Players who only have access to the 2014 Player's Handbook will maintain their character options, spells, and magical items in their character sheets. Players with access to the 2024 and 2014 digital Player's Handbooks can select from both sources when creating new characters. Players will not need to rely on homebrew to use their 2014 player options, including spells and magic items as recommended in previous changelogs. Immediately whenever I heard about this, I thought it was weird that they just didn't immediately think to just make a button like a Switch, and I can understand there's a lot of like behind the scenes stuff, IT stuff in the building of the website. Maybe it was a problem, or maybe it was going to cost more money. But I have a really hard time believing that D&D Beyond, Hasbro, whatever, are lacking in funds whenever it comes to making their clientele happy. And then I started diving into it a little bit deeper, and I was just looking for like issues with D&D Beyond in general, because I've had my gripes about it, as you can tell. And I found this thread of this guy that was doing a project in school where he was kind of discussing what are the issues with D&D Beyond, and he listed a bunch. But this was the fun one that made me laugh. It's run by a greedy corporate bastards who are actively antagonistic towards their own users, in addition to being hellbent on manipulatively nickeling and diming them. He said, "Oh, you meant the UX problem." Fails to clear a very low bar of being actually customizable. Isn't that what a character sheet is for? If it doesn't exist in their database, it won't let you do it. That was always kind of my biggest gripe, is that it always seemed to be just so hard to just do the little things that you wanted to do. I did think it was funny that Roll20 immediately capitalized on this. They put out a post saying that you can play D&D on Roll20 like the way you want to. This year, we want you to have the options, so you can use the 2014 stuff, everything, or I'm assuming you can use the 2024 stuff too. I'm not saying that like Roll20 is better than D&D Beyond, because I haven't used both of them to any great extent, but it is pretty cool that other companies are realizing that they can benefit off the faults of things like D&D Beyond. And then I even asked, I was like, how many platforms are actually hosting the ability to make character sheets? I asked the old chat GPTs, and it gave me like 11 options here. And I was just curious if there was like hundreds of these platforms that gave you the ability to do it. I will say that I'm actually using Legend Keeper for my games, and my players can make their own character sheet there. But it's one of those things, you kind of have to have the books and stuff too. It doesn't have all the spells and things there. It just allows you to kind of make a virtual character sheet, and then you still have to do it kind of the old school way. But a lot of them are using, along with that, Fight Club 5th edition. If you know, you know. I would say that most of my players, probably all of them, are switching to this. It is something to look into. I've always enjoyed it whenever I've been a part of the random one-shot where another Dungeon Master's at the table. I've always used Fight Club 5th edition. And, I mean, this just kind of is a story of, like, the boom of D&D, and the reason why Wizards, Hasbro are in this position where they can keep fucking up and pissing people off, because they're trying to just gather all the doubloons that they can while they have the chance. Not really harkening back to the 70s, that is what it is, the beginning of D&D. But when 5th edition launched, it was such a phenomenon, like even to me, because I was playing AD&D and 3.5. When 5th edition launched, I was very skeptical, because it was coming off, like 4th edition was like, oh, it's very much a video game. It was very different. But then 5e came out, and then Critical Role started, around that time, and they switched to 5th edition, and then just this boom happened, and then COVID happened, and everyone was sitting at home role-playing and playing D&D, and then, the movie happens, Baldur's Gate 3 happens. I mean, these guys cannot be doing that bad, and to continually mess up and not give players what they want is just very, very aggravating. But Dungeons & Dragons is a very content creator heavy space. I mean, it really is. There's hundreds of D&D actual play podcasts and shows. You get on Twitch and YouTube right now, you can find a lot of them. But I'm just curious if, because of a lot of the issues that have come and gone, will they resurface, and will it push the kind of the upper echelon of these shows to start using different systems? Critical Role is making their own. I think they've actually made two, Candela Obscura and Daggerheart, I believe. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. I'm curious what you think and what you think is going to happen in the future, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and bye-bye. Oh, and here's a funny clip from last week's session.
I cried though once because I didn't get fries with my sandwich.
Hey, she was very emotional. She's very emotional.
Chris came home and brought everyone food, I got a sandwich but not fries, so I cried about it.
That's funny.
I was like, I asked for a sandwich. And he's like, yeah, you asked for a sandwich. And I'm like, I wanted a meal.